Let's go on to another huge issue this week, and that is, of course, the India travel ban. Australian citizens banned from returning to their own country. The PM has announced today that it'll come off on May the 15th. But as you know, I opposed it even before it was announced, when it was merely being mooted. Many of you disagree with me. Sure, fine, such is life. But how many in politics and the media have changed their views on this issue according to the zeitgeist or to the political angle?
Going on that dozens of other countries have done the same thing. It seems to be consistent with what everyone else is doing. Look, it makes sense, given what's going on. I mean,
that was Phil Curry from the Australian Financial Review last week, but today he wrote with more scepticism. Just because something is popular doesn't mean it's right, he said. Ain't that the truth? Other backflips have been far more dramatic. Take this from former opposition leader Bill Shorten last week.
But it is well past time to shut our borders to flights from India. India's our friend. We should send them what we can, but time to close the borders. They should have been closed days ago.
Pretty strong stuff, but just a week later, could this be the same man?
I think it is disgusting that Australian citizens can't come home to secure facilities. I think it is a complete failure of leadership.
Well, we've all heard about Each Way Albo. Now there's Bob Each Way Bill, isn't there? But this political flip seemed to trigger a leftist media flop. Over at The Project, the woke take initially backed this harsh ban.
As long as this virus is spreading anywhere, it is a threat to people everywhere.
Today, Australia moved to minimise that threat.
We agreed to pause direct passenger flights between India and Australia until the 15th of May.
If you take all the people who want to get out of India, then you become India.
But surprise, surprise, when Labor changed its tune, by coincidence, so did The Project.
What strikes me is that throughout the course of this pandemic, Australians have responded really well to politicians at every level being pragmatic and practical. And I think that's why this decision to criminalise people trying to return stands out, because it doesn't seem or feel right.
Yeah, that's a backflip by The Project. But don't you just love McDonald's breezy declaration that Australians have responded really well to politicians being pragmatic and practical during the pandemic? Where do you start with that? The imposition of curfews that weren't based on medical advice, arbitrary border closures, jailing of people for crossing state borders? Or how about the infamous Queensland hospitals are for our people line from Anastasia Palaszczuk? As for the ABC, it couldn't help but see racism in the government's India travel ban decision.
This Fortress Australia feeling. I spoke to a government MP who said to me, it was just such a good line. He said to me, when you look at the way we're behaving, right, at the moment, someone who thinks this has gone too far, the White Australia policy doesn't seem that surprising anymore, does it? And I was like, no, you're right. But is there an unconscious bias thing going on here? I think that is worth asking.
But for some reason, I don't think Karvelas or anyone else at the ABC accused New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern of racism after this announcement last month.
Can you tell me, Wilson, whether there's any connection between this and the decision by Prime Minister Ardern to announce a temporary suspension of overseas arrivals from India?
But we know, of course, the border is our best line of defence. But it's important to remember, Lisa, that these are New Zealanders being denied access into New Zealand for the first time.
Wilson, and as you made that point very well, this is very much in focus now because of the opening of borders between Australia and New Zealand.
No, of course, St Jacinda of the Shaky Isles, she gets a free pass from their ABC. Now, the Sydney Morning Herald associate editor Tony Wright was one of the many commentators outraged by the government's stance on the India travel ban. Yet Prime Minister Scott Morrison apparently failed to understand there would be an almighty backlash to a measure so draconian that no other nation has imposed its like, he wrote just yesterday. This didn't escape the attention of Melbourne law professor Jeremy Gans, who tweeted, Tony Wright, you should correct your article. Jacinda Ardern imposed a like ban, including on citizens, complete with a potential jail penalty last month. Oops, the article has since been amended to read, yet Prime Minister Scott Morrison apparently failed to understand there would be an almighty backlash to such a draconian measure. Curiously, there's no editorial notation to the effect to notify people of that change. And how about the ABC's prominent health reporter Norman Swan, he of the incorrect predictions and wrong-headed prescriptions? He was so keen on travel bans last year that he wanted a block on people returning from the United States. He changed his angle this week too.
What do you make of the India travel ban?
I think that the punitive element to it is appalling, and it just is unnecessary. There are logistical issues here, but we've touted the great success of hotel quarantine.